Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. So I'm here in Pontoon Beach, and as Lyle says, I don't see any pontoons or any beach. But here in Pontoon Beach, Illinois, delivered my load last night over at Hershey. Just waiting for a load out of here. Having some trouble getting some loads that fit our situation. So anyway, I wanted to talk about a couple of things. I don't have any real history today, although I will tell you this. We were going through 84 Pennsylvania the other day, and 84 Pennsylvania is down there off of 70, down by Washington, PA, south of Pittsburgh. And you may know that 84 Pennsylvania is the reason that 84 lumber is called 84 lumber. If you know anybody that's a carpenter, does it professionally, if there's an 84 lumber near them, they probably use it, because that's where contractors really go. You can't get a lot of stuff you need to build big things or whatever. You can't get it Depot or Lowe's or whatever. So anyway, that's where 84 lumber comes from. But what I said when we were going through there, I was talking to my co-driver, and I said, I wonder why 84 lumber is called 84 lumber, why 84 Pennsylvania is called 84 Pennsylvania. And then I got to thinking about it. I was like, maybe the town was founded in 1884 or something, or 1784. So I looked it up, and it turns out the town used to be called Smithville or something, but there was already another town in Pennsylvania like that. Not that that's ever stopped Pennsylvanians from naming towns the same name repeatedly, because if you Google certain township names, there's more that there'll be 3 of them in the state, like Hanover Township or whatever. There'll be several, and then you got to figure out which part of the state you want to be in. So it did turn out that it had a name of another town, and so they were like, well, we need to come up with a new name. And theories about how it became 84. This did happen, by the way, in 1884. But there are also other theories that the postmaster picked it because he was just lazy. He's like, all right, it's 1884, I'll call it 84 PA. Other theories, though, were that it was mile marker 84 on the B&O Railroad. And way before interstate highways, trains always, mile markers weren't very important to them, still are, but in a big way. And so maybe it was 84 on the trackage that went through that town. I don't know. And then there was another kind of pretty convoluted theory about a guy that was the second in command of the 84th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry Regiment, but why wouldn't you name it after the guy instead of the regiment? But anyway, so that's a little history about 84. I still think it's the year. I think they were just well, we got to change the name. Let's just make it 84. So I wanted to talk about a couple of things. One is this phenomena that I've been more recently experiencing at Prime, that I call the police department interrogation phenomena. And what it is this. Have you ever had to talk to the police about something you witnessed, or maybe you were a victim of a crime, and then you tell your whole story to somebody, and some police officer, and he's taking all these notes, and then he's like, all right, thank you for this, and blah blah blah, right? And then 10 minutes later, another cop is like, hey, I need to get a statement from you. And they're like, I just talked to Officer Friendly over there. And they're like, yeah, I just need to hear it directly from you. And then, a day later, some other detective or some other person calls you up. They're like, hey, I was hoping we could get a statement on the record from you. And you're like, I talked to these other 2 guys. And they're like, yeah, but we just need to hear it from you. Well, that's what's been going on in my life at Prime, right? I'll send a message, and by the way, anybody that knows me knows that when I give information, I overgive, right? I don't leave anything to the imagination. Why? Partially because of the military. Like, you always make sure everything is known, right? General orders of a sentry, pass down all orders to the sentry who relieves me, pass down, right? Like, it was just taught to us, like, every single thing. Like, when I did a turnover on the bridge or whatever command I was at, it's like, hey, I got to know everything, not just some of it, everything. And then being a lawyer, details, right? Like, you always want to put in every detail. And so when I send messages about a situation or something that's going on, I send a really detailed message. But I feel like it's like, I don't know where these messages really go. Like, a lot of times I don't even get an acknowledgement that they've been received. So it's just, to me, they're just in the ether. But then other times I'm like, didn't you, like, I'm talking to somebody like 6 hours after I said it, I'm like, didn't you read what I said? Like, they're sending me a message. I would assume it goes out from the same screen as my message came in on, right? Because it's based on the tractor number. And I'm like, don't you guys read anything? And like, one day I had a load that wasn't gonna go, right? Because there was a snafu with the computers at the shipper. So I'm like, okay, give me another load. And then they're trying to set, like, I'm supposed to go on home time, they're trying to send me the opposite direction. And then the guy that I was messaging with, he didn't even know where I lived. Like, I don't know. And so then I'm like, why don't you know where I live? I said, I haven't, I moved, blah, blah, blah. I got a new license. And then he asks me if I told HR. And I'm like, yeah, I know what to do, right? Like you guys don't have, and so, like, it's like, they're on the old Mary Tyler Moore show, right? The Ted Knight character always would sign off his newscast was, "That's news to me," right? And I'm just like, this is what I'm getting from everybody in dispatch. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, I don't know why you didn't. Right? Like I say stuff, it's like the reading comprehension is an issue, or just like scrolling up and seeing what the driver said. Anyway, it's really frustrating. It feels like I'm talking, well, I know you told them, but can you tell me, please? I need to get it straight from you. It's like, there's an old saying, I don't chew my cabbage twice, meaning I shouldn't have to say stuff over and over again. And I feel like that's what's going on. A lot of people just show up in my feed, so to speak, my message stream, that I don't even know. And a lot of times lately, my driver manager, there's 168 hours in a week, but you really only get your fleet manager 40 hours a week, right? So the other 128 hours a week, you got to deal with somebody else. And when that somebody else is totally not clued into what you're doing, or what anybody's doing, or what driving a truck seems like, or looks like, or feels like, it's kind of frustrating. So anyway, I just share that with you. I don't know if everybody else has been experiencing that phenomenon. But by the way, if you're a fleet manager, or you work in dispatch at Prime, know this, none of this is in a vacuum, right? Like, drivers talk to each other. And in fact, I have several people that I group text with about our night dispatch. Like, we all have the same fleet manager. I know a lot of people who have the same fleet manager, like at least a half a dozen to 10 people. And that's not that's not the whole fleet. But after you've been at Prime for a while, you start to get, you start meeting people who have, same fleet manager as you, and people start talking, So I'm betting I'm not the only one that's observed this lately. So anyway, I just share that with you. But what I really wanted to talk about today is, because I think about, I've kind of alluded to it over the years, past several months. I think about, like, mental health, and how it impacts you, and talked about what it's like getting out of the military after a long period of time, and so anyway, I wanted to talk about a study that I read, because I read constantly. Like when I'm driving down the road, I have a 24-inch monitor right in front of me because I'm constantly reading articles, right? Like the view you see of me right now is what you would see on the camera on my monitor, because I'm constantly reading stuff. Harvard Book Review, I'm reading, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, you name it, right? I'm reading everything. Everything that comes in my feed, I'm reading it, right? I can tell you what Anne Hathaway's doing. I can tell you what the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board is doing today. I read everything. So anyway, I don't do that. I have very few distractions when I'm driving. Like my biggest distraction is reaching down here and feeling around and, oh, there's my soda. All right. So I read this article. It just came into my feed or whatever, and it's from the Commercial Carrier Journal. It's an industry publication, probably meant for people in the C-suite, but I'm in the C-suite of my own truck, so I get to read this stuff. And more importantly, I read it so you don't have to. And I got a breakdown. I took notes on my Kenworth. I don't know if you can see that, but I took a bunch of notes on this article. And the article was on driver satisfaction as it relates to like retention, recruiting, etc., but mostly retention. So what happened is there was a study, and there's a survey that goes out. But what these researchers did is they took the results of this survey and they reached out to a number of drivers. Now, at first blush, it seems like this is a really small sample size, but I'm going to tell you what the research methodology was. So they reached out and got in contact with 12 current and former long-haul truck drivers, okay? But what they did is, instead of just handing them a survey where you number 10 is, I love it so much that I would marry it, down to 1, which is, if I could burn it down, I would, that kind of survey. Because let's be candid, we all go through and just kind of click 8s and 7s, and then if we actually read the whole question and it's something we feel strongly about, we'll either go to like a 2 or a plus 10 or whatever. But they did these 1 to 2 hour interviews with people, and they used and this jumped out at me because I went through law school. They used what is called the Socratic method, and the Socratic method is a method of questioning that doesn't allow just a yes or no answer, and it demands that the interviewee give more detailed responses, oftentimes to previous responses. So they would be like, well, why do you think X happens? And somebody says, well, because, and they lay it out. And then the follow-up question might be like, okay, well, when that happens, what are you thinking? Right? So it's this digging, right? It's an interrogation, right? That's the Socratic method. And some people find that method intimidating, but it's a way to get people to think kind of deeper about an issue, and it works for analyzing, court cases and stuff, and it works in this regard. So there are 3 items, right, that have consistently been named by drivers as things that make them want to leave the industry, right? Or things that concern them about their job. The first one is pay. Shouldn't be too much of a surprise there. Second thing is home time, right? And the third thing is respect. And here's the funny thing, right? If you look at those advertisements on the back of semi-trailers that pass you, how many times have you seen, get more pay, more home time, more respect, right? Or don't get treated like a number. We pay top dollar, we'll get you home, and we'll respect you. Some variation of that theme, right? Pay, home time, respect. The 3 magic bullets to keep any truck driver happy, right? But here's what this research found out, because remember, they did interviews, Socratic questioning of the interview subjects. So this wasn't just like a simple Q&A, a couple of yes or no questions. This was, have you ever been to a job interview? A job interview that goes 2 hours, you walk out of there feeling exhausted, like you're all like sweaty, your pits are all wet, right? 2 hours of being interviewed is a long time. So anyway, first thing, pay. This is only 12, but I really feel like these people did their homework. Of the 12 people, not one of them thought that they were underpaid as a truck driver, as an over-the-road truck driver. They also said that pay was not a huge differentiator between jobs, right? Like some people, I am very certain that some people pick a company based on the color of their truck sometimes. Like they'll be like, I'd like to drive for them, but I hate their trucks, right? We'll pick a company based on equipment. We'll pick a company based on all sorts of crazy factors. Driver-facing cameras get some people hot under the collar. But so pay is not really a differentiator. Like somebody's not going to make a huge change for 3 cents a mile, for example. But here's the reason that a lot of these people were concerned about pay and concerned about making more money. And it was personal financial mismanagement. Now, you've heard this theme from a lot of YouTubers, right? Like Lyle talked about, being prepared for a downturn. It wasn't that they didn't get paid enough. They just were desperate for more money because they can't manage their finances. And in particular, what they pointed to was compulsive spending to try to keep up with the Joneses, keep up appearances. I think a lot of people that are truck drivers have this notion, when somebody says, what do you do for a living? And let's say that the other person is, they know they're college educated or whatever, right? They're like, oh, I drive a truck, but they're not proud of that. I mean, they might have a t-shirt at home that says, proud trucker wife, whatever, I'm, keep America rolling. But they're not, ultimately, they feel like they're not. And I've gotten this a lot on my channel where people are like, oh, you left being a lawyer to be a truck driver? Like, truck driving is not an honorable profession that you can actually make a decent living at, right? But forget about how much you can make. It's an honorable profession, right? But a lot of these people, that compulsive spending, that need to keep up, like I see people with like $50,000 trucks parked in the parked in the lot at the terminal. I'm like, why are you making a $700 a month truck payment on something you only drive 5 days a month? Like people do that to themselves, right? But compulsive spending is a symptom of low self-esteem and low self-worth. So think about that for a second, and I'm going to come back to that. Okay, the second factor, home time, right? Many of these drivers reported that notwithstanding home time is important to them, they often spend 24 to 48 hours of their home time in isolation. Like they don't want to be around anybody. And they attribute this to like needing to catch up on sleep. They attribute it to, just trying to get rid of all the stress that they're under and stuff. So that points out that people don't use home time to rejuvenate relationships and, get with the kids, get with the family, get with the friends, have a good time. I know Lyle does, because you always see him on his videos doing, partying with everybody. But, and by the way, I do that. I was home for 3 days, hung out with, my kids, went to the football game, tailgated, took my daughter to play rehearsal, you can't just go home and then be a hermit. Like, if you're going to do that, and you do have family at home, wife, kids, whatever it is, you might as well just stay on the road. Because the other thing that people mentioned about the home time was, oh, I'm not making any money. But that goes back to number one, right? People that blow a lot of money, compulsive spending, when they're not making a dime, they're really worried about it, right? They need to make more money because they're not thinking about it. And home time can be great, but not if you're constantly worried about how much money you're not making while you're home. So that's the second. The third thing, respect. And some of these drivers reported that they never feel like they're not respected. They never sense disrespect. But a lot of drivers reported seeing a lack of self-esteem and a lack of self-respect in other drivers and in themselves. And you don't have to look very far at a truck stop to see what I'm talking about. And I don't even have to look very far at a prime terminal to see what this is. You see people whose clothes are filthy. You see people who smell bad, or you smell people that smell bad. You see people that are, morbidly obese. You see people that are, even when they're at a place where they could interact with other drivers, they are totally just sitting by themselves. They're sitting by themselves eating. They're sitting by themselves playing like a video game. And maybe they are interacting with other people, but it's not face to face. It's just this virtual stuff, right? People pull into truck stops and terminals, don't even get out, right? They don't even get any fresh air. They just sit in their truck, right? All of this adds up. And so people that lack self-esteem and self-respect often deal with perceived disrespect in unhealthy ways. That's called road rage, among other things. But you see it in all sorts of instances where, you'll see a guy that's all pissed off about some minor thing that the lady at the Flying J can't really do anything about, but he's like, my life is ruined because your computer system's down, or because I couldn't get an extra towel for the shower. And I'll admit, there have been times when I have not dealt with disrespect or perception of disrespect in an adult, rational way. I am much better than I used to be, but this can happen to any of us. Sometimes you just get pissed, but a lot of times it's because of underlying issues. And those reactions and those feelings of lack of self-respect, lack of self-esteem, are symptoms of anxiety and depression, according to the study. And I really do believe that's the case. All of those three dissatisfactions are linked to our lifestyle, right? Poor nutrition, lack of exercise, isolation, feelings of isolation or actual isolation, and poor sleep. So, but here's the good news. All of those things we can take significant steps to mitigate. Poor nutrition. Yeah, I said to my co-driver yesterday, I said, when I go to the same truck stops all the time, I get sick of looking at the same things. But every once in a while, you got to switch things up. But poor nutrition is a choice, just like good nutrition is, okay? And I don't always eat well, but I try to be cognizant of that. I know when I'm not eating well. But if you never even think about it, you're never going to fix that. And just making small incremental changes can make a big difference. And I will say this: Prime has a dietitian. They have driver health and fitness. They have a lot of resources. You can incorporate that stuff, and it can make big differences in your health and how you feel about the job. Lack of exercise. Everybody that's ever ridden with me knows I park as far away from the terminal as I can. I do it for a couple of reasons. One is because I'd rather just get out and pee behind my truck in the grass than I would walk all the way inside. But I also walk long distances. Like, I'll walk 200 yards to get a soda, right? And on my phone, I know how far I walk every day. I also have my bike with me. I have weights. When I fuel, not always, but almost every time when I'm fueling, I drop down and do 15 push-ups. Why? Because I got my gloves on, so I'm not getting my hands dirty anyway, right? I just do 15 push-ups. Yesterday, I did 45 push-ups that way, okay? I feel better about it. Am I jacked? No, but I feel better just doing 15 push-ups. I feel better mentally. Isolation. Again, talk to people. Right? Like, you see people standing around, they don't even talk to each other. You see people at the terminal, they don't interact with anybody unless they have to. Now, I get that there's a lot of introverts in trucking. I get that there's people with, that are on the autism spectrum. But interacting with people is important. And that's why I always think it's great when people come up to me at a truck stop or at a terminal or at a shipper and be like, hey, I watch your channel. I like to meet people. I like to get to know them. That's been a great part of this business. And you don't have to be a super people person, but human beings in isolation, it's not good for you. And a lot of truckers know that, and a lot of truckers have said that to me. Do something about it. Create your own network. Like I was saying, I have a group of people, we just text each other. We ask each other questions. Sometimes we just snark on night dispatch, whatever. But it's a release. We all know each other. It's a way to stay in contact. FaceTiming. It's pretty rare that I don't talk to somebody or more than one person in my family, wife, kids, whatever. It's pretty rare that a day goes by that I don't do that. Poor sleep. Okay, if you're taking care of your nutrition and you're working out, you will sleep better. That's a fact. I can personally attest to that. When I'm acting like a three-toed sloth, like some couch potato, I don't sleep as well as when I exercise and eat healthy. If I eat a bunch of crap and don't work out, I don't sleep as well. It's just that simple. And all four of those symptoms, right? Poor nutrition, lack of exercise, isolation, poor sleep, they all cause or worsen depressive symptoms, and they impact your physical health. So what's the conclusion that I'm drawing from this article? It's that we control almost all of our happiness and our job satisfaction, right? Like, this job is hard, but truck drivers make it way harder on themselves than they need to. And a lot of it starts with little tiny choices, right? Instead of picking up a bag of chips, if they just picked up 2 bananas instead, still have your soda, but make it a diet soda. Or still have your coffee, but don't pour a bunch of sugar in it. Whatever it is, right? Like, all those little choices add up. And somebody famous and smarter than me said, if you take care of the little things, the big things will take care of themselves. So maybe this isn't the job for you, but don't make it not the job for you. Don't make what you like about the job get overwhelmed by things that make the job harder that you have control over. So anyway, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I enjoy everybody's comments. Almost everybody's comments. I don't want to lie. Some people make some stupid comments, but keep them coming anyway. And be safe out there, and hopefully my phone dings, so hopefully we got a load, and I'll get back to making some money so I can compulsively spend it. Anyway, talk to you later. Bye.